ਪੰਜਾਬ ਟੀਵੀ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਦਰਸ਼ਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ ਤੇ ਵੈਲਕਮ ਬੈਕ। ਅੱਜ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਮੈਥਿਊ ਗਾਇ ਜੀ ਬੈਠੇ ਨੇ ਜੋ ਕਿ ਲਿਬਰਲ ਦੇ ਲੀਡਰ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਅਗਰ ਜਿੱਤਦੀ ਹੈ ਲਿਬਰਲ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਸਾਡੇ ਵਿਕਟੋਰੀਆ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੀਮੀਅਰ ਵੀ ਬਣਨਗੇ ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਬਲੈਕਬਰਨ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੁਰੂ ਘਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆ ਕੇ ਬੈਠੇ ਹੋਏ ਹਾਂ ਇਸ ਸਮੇਂ ਤੇ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇਹ ਆਪਣੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪਰਸੈਂਟੇਜ ਇੰਨੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਵੱਡੀ ਹੋਣ ਦੇ ਕਾਰਨ ਇਹ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਵੱਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਧਿਆਨ ਹੁਣ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਆ ਉਹ ਵੇਖ ਕੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪੰਜਾਬੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਮਿਲਦੀ ਆ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਮੈਂ ਕੁਛ ਇੱਕ ਸਵਾਲ ਪੁੱਛਾਂਗੀ ਮੈਥਿਊ ਜੀ ਤੋਂ ਅਤੇ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਕੀ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਨੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਵਾਲਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ। So, hi Matthew, how are you?
Sat Shri Akal, very good, thank you.
That is good to know. Sat Shri Akal to you too. So, Matthew, first of all, I would like to ask you, the very first question that I want to ask you is, how are you feeling about the whole election, the whole everything that's going on with the party and with the opposition as well?
Confident.
Confident?
I think Victorians are now realising that after 8 years of the same government, they're looking for something fresh and different. Something that will fix the health crisis in the state, something that will help with cost of living. That's why we want to commit to lowering stamp duty, lowering payroll tax, giving $2 flat fare public transport, but importantly, as I said, fixing our health system once and for all.
Well, those are a lot of claims, Matthew. Well, let me ask you the very first question. Another question that I want to ask is that what is the one main reason that you can say, being in the party, that people should vote to Liberals?
Because we need to fix Victoria's health system. And doing that is very, very important. It is our absolute priority. But a second reason is that the state needs confidence again.
Yep.
You know, Victoria has lost confidence in the last few years.
Yeah.
And I think it's about time we had a government that gave confidence to Victorians by respecting every Victorian and not just saying it, meaning it. And when we can say, from my side in particular, says we want to respect everyone in our state, we mean it. We don't just say it because it's an election.
Yep.
We actually have been practicing that way for some time, and I think it's about time we had a government that did that too.
That's absolutely right. So, what do you think are the main policies of Liberal for the people, like in general, for an individual, for every single individual? What are the policies of Liberal in general?
Well, we believe in family, in faith, in enterprise, business, and in the individual. So we believe in the rights of the individual. We believe that you have the right to raise your children, not the state. We believe that you set your family values, not the government. We believe that it's you and your faith that sets the value system of your children, of your community, that shouldn't be interfered with by the government. And so the Liberal Party believes in preserving and enhancing those beliefs. That's our value structure. So we believe that particularly a lot of people like yours and my family who came to Australia from overseas, we believe that our family, our faith, our business background, our communities are something that should be preserved, and the government should do that, and that's the kind of government I want to lead.
That's right. If you win, when you win, what do you think as a party or as an individual yourself will be the first step taken for the people of Victoria by the Liberal Party and by yourself?
The first thing we're going to do is focus on fixing the health system. We've said that would be our priority. It has to be our priority. So that when any of us or our families or our neighbours need an ambulance and we ring the 000 ambulance line, that it's answered, that an ambulance comes, that they can go to hospital, they're not put in a tent, they're actually given a bed, and that we actually have a world-class health service again. And for all the people who work in our health system, that they are given the respect and they're actually given a good environment in which to work in. And that is my absolute priority.
Well, that is so good to know, because many people do die in their homes just because the ambulances don't come on time. So my next question to you would be that with the increasing rate of the crimes and thefts literally all around Victoria, we could hear everything from everywhere, that there are crimes increasing, there are thefts increasing, the people are smashing down the cars and the windows of the homes. Are there any policies that will be coming into place when your party wins?
We've had some very strong policies around law and order for a long time, and my opponents in the Labor Party have criticised me for having those policies. But we believe in having those who obey the law to be the first priority to be protected. We don't believe in having a justice system that tries to make excuses for people who keep committing crimes. Our focus is on protecting all those people, millions and millions of Victorians who actually adhere to the law, who do the right thing, and who live a peaceful and happy life. We think they should be the priority in the justice system to be protected.
Right. That is absolutely a brilliant thought. But is there any idea, the first step that will be taken regarding these crimes, like anything that can come into place that we can see in near future?
Giving the police greater powers, such as move on laws. It's called move on legislation, and that means they can actually move people on from being a menace. So hanging out the front of a temple, for instance, and causing trouble, or out the front of a home and doing the same thing, the police have the power to move those people away. At the moment, the current Labor government took those powers away from the police. We're going to give them back to the police. That means they can intervene when someone's causing trouble. At the moment, they can't. They're just spectators, and they can only act if someone does something wrong. But if someone is intimidating or threatening people, the police will be given those powers to move, not arrest them, but move them away. I think that's a very good start.
So don't you think that this suggestion of the party, like this, if this comes into place, it might be used in a wrong way by people?
Look, we have to trust our police. We actually have to trust our law and order officials to do the right thing on circumstances like that. And I don't believe that police abuse the system. I think police are very good and they adhere to those laws, and they are placed in very difficult circumstances, and so it's the government's important imperative to back our police. But we have to give them the powers to do their job, to protect us, and that's what we're going to do.
But like we've already seen during lockdown, during COVID, that people do retaliate to government policies. If this policy comes into place, I would like to ask you, there are many people who are going to be against it. Like they're going to ask the same question, like, how can you guarantee that the police is going to follow the rules and regulations 100%? Given the power of taking an action, they can do whatever they want. How can you make people trust the police?
Trust is an important word.
Yeah.
You're right. Trust is a very important word. Trust in government, trust in police, trust in our authorities. That's one of the most important things I want to bring back to the state government, is that word, is trust. Because you're asking really relevant questions after lockdown. A lot of people are distrustful of the government in particular. You know, they made promises for 4,000 intensive care beds that never happened. They've promised to build hospitals, which have never happened.
Yep.
They've promised to build Indian community centres, which have never happened.
Yep.
So bringing back trust is very important. And you're right, that will take time. And that is a work of mine, should I be the Premier, to actually show Victorians that we are worthy of that trust from them.
Right. So as we're talking about the healthcare system here and ambulances, I would like to ask you, is there any vision of a specific quota that will be given to the healthcare, any kind of money that will go into healthcare, or is it just improving the system, or is it about improving the money as well in the system? Because if there's no money, there aren't going to be enough people. If there are not enough people, then we won't be able to operate or take care of the patients that will be coming in those ambulances. So what are your thoughts about that?
So we've committed a few things on that front. First of all, for 000, which is the emergency dispatch system, we've committed $480 million to get it up to scratch, to put new people there, more people there, to answer those calls, and to help with ambulances to get to hospitals. When they get to hospitals, we've committed to put in place an extra 40,000 more nurses and midwives over the 4-year period, which we're losing about 5,000-6,000 a year. This would be covering that and adding more. We've also committed to redirect all the money from the Labor Party's underground railway in the southern suburbs, all $11 billion at the moment they've put forward, but all that money that we can avail back into the healthcare system. And what that means is we've now committed over $6 billion worth of health, and that money, I can tell you where it's coming from that railway all into health. So the election is a choice. It's a choice between whether you want to build a railway in the southern suburbs for a few people or fix the healthcare system across the state with that money. You can't do both. It's not responsible. You can't responsibly do both. You could put our state into a huge amount of debt. But we believe that money is best going to the healthcare system. If the money goes in there, that means I can put $1 billion into the Melton Hospital, $750 million to the Mildura Hospital, and you can keep going through a number of the commitments we've made, and that's where that money comes from.
Right. And another question for the past 2 to 3 years has been aged care systems. So what are your thoughts as an individual, as hopefully a premier who's going to be leading Victoria. What are your thoughts about that? What have you thought about aged cares and people there?
Part of that package for training more nurses and midwives is people who will then move through the system, and a lot of them obviously through into aged care after that as well. And so when we're training thousands of people to do that, that means they can work in that system as well. It also means that we can work with the federal government to provide better regulation on the aged care system. Importantly though, as we know, a lot of people died in aged care during COVID. That's why we want to have a royal commission into COVID to see what we did well and see what we did poorly, and to make sure that we get aged care right in Victoria rather than constantly making excuses.
That's right. One more thing, you mentioned $2 flat fares. What is that all about? So how is it going to work?
What that means is in built-up areas like Melbourne, Geelong, Ballarat, Bendigo, if you travel on a local service like Pakenham to the city or Tarneet to Werribee on a bus, on a train, on a tram, you only pay $2. That's your daily fare. So that covers you for 24 hours, $2 flat fare. And the flat fare is for built-up areas around the state. If you travel between cities, then V-Line will be half price. So what we want to do is encourage Victorians to get around by public transport in their cities. So for us in Melbourne, that means that Blackburn to the city will be $2. Once you pay that once in the morning, that's the whole day, $2 flat fare public transport. It's simple, it's easy, it's cheap, and we can do it. It's affordable.
That's something that would be really great if it comes into place, because this will make traveling a lot easier for people, and it will take off the traffic from roads, and because people will be traveling in public transport, because most of the people they think like, okay, I'm going to pay $10 a day for public transport. I would just pay like $10 for diesel or petrol.
That's right.
So that's a great idea, but I would like to ask you, where will all the money come from? Where will that money come from to cover the costs of public transport?
So importantly, given that we are funding most of the biggest amount of money we're paying is in healthcare, but we're taking all of that money, all of those pledges are being funded by the redirecting of money from the suburban rail loop into health. So that means that the money that would normally come out of the budget, which you usually set aside for different projects, we have ours for health. $6 billion all being paid for by the redirecting of money out of the suburban rail loop. That leaves a larger pool of money for other projects. And for instance, that comes down to $2 flat fares, or the stamp duty, zero stamp duty for first home buyers for 12 months. That kind of stuff. It leaves a little more wriggle room for us. But importantly, we're still not going to promise huge promises beyond that. We've promised a lot. We're not going to overcommit, and we're not going to put our state further into debt like the Labor Party is. We'll be sensible and reasonable and responsible, and we're only promising things we can afford.
And that's pretty fair to say from a party. One more question that I would like to ask you is, like today, we are sitting here in a Gurudwara, in a Sikh temple, as we say. We were promised, like, Indians have the number one immigrants in Australia. The highest percentage of immigrants is of Indians, and especially of North Indians, including Punjabis like myself. So we were promised a lot of other schools, other places where this particular community could be promoted or be taken care of, so that our children and the next generation, they don't forget completely about our culture, because we are here as a multicultural society. That's what makes Australia the greatest. So if that culture fades away, the multicultural society of Australia that Australia is very famous for will also fade away. So what can we look forward to in this case?
I'll be very direct about the Indian community and Punjabis in particular. We have committed to 3 major community centres to build for the Indian community, one in the west, one in the north, one in the southeast. They'll cost about $9 to $10 million each, but we're going to build them because they're the right thing to do, and they will allow you to bring your children there to learn language, culture. Oldies can come and play cards, but they're a centre, they're a hub. We've invested in other communities. It's now time to invest in Indian communities. For Punjabi, we want to bring Punjabi and Hindi into our schools. And what that means is that if children if they come from a language where their parents have been born in Punjab and they come to Australia, that means they can use Punjabi or learn it again in schools so that they're fluent. And what that means, exactly what you said, our best asset in Melbourne is our people.
Yep.
And that means they can, as kids, can grow into adults to do business or potentially work with our country and back to Punjab in a fluent language. And it means we have links in Australia that are international, the same we would offer to kids from a Chinese background or kids from a South American background. But we must give the same rights to kids, particularly Punjabi, which is the fastest growing language in Australia.
That is true. And even Punjabi culture and Punjabi people are all around the world. If our children learn Punjabi because our children are able to learn Spanish, French,
German.
Italian, German, anything. So if they learn Punjabi as an additional language, they might be able to do an international business or they can have international ties all over the world.
So in British Columbia and Canada, I think the second most spoken language is Punjabi.
Yeah.
So, it's not just about one part of India. It is an international language.
Absolutely.
And so it's so important then to give kids that special skill. And it won't be for every child, but for the kids who do want it, it's available. And it means they can then use it and they can then learn it and they're fluent and they know how to write it and read it and speak it. And as you said, it's not just advantaging us in a multicultural sense. It advantages the whole country in so many different ways. That's why I'm going to make sure it's brought into government schools.
Well, those are really appealing claims, Matthew. And that was all for today. Those are all the questions that I wanted to ask you. And I would encourage our viewers to ask your questions to Liberal Party and what they can promise to you and what changes they can bring into our community. Well, good luck to you and your team. And I really hope that all these claims made here today, being you the Premier, all of these come true.
Hopefully that, God willing, if I'm Premier, we'll come back in 12 months' time. We'll have this interview and I'll give you an update on where we are on every single one of these points.
Well, I really hope that you remember me.
Sure we will, don't worry.
Because I'm going to slip some more ideas into your head when it comes to our community,
good.
which is like one of the biggest communities in Australia.
It certainly is, but I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Matthew.
you.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
ਸੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਮੈਥਿਊ ਜੀ ਦੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਮੂੰਹੋਂ ਸੁਣਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਕੀ ਕਲੇਮਸ ਉਹ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਅਤੇ ਜਨਰਲੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਆਸਟ੍ਰੇਲੀਅਨ ਸੁਸਾਇਟੀ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਕੀ ਇੰਪਰੂਵਮੈਂਟਸ ਹੋਣਗੀਆਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਲੇਮਸ ਕੀਤੇ ਨੇ ਅਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਦਾਅਵੇ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ ਕਿ ਆਪਣੀ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰਮੋਟ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਆਪਣੀ ਲੈਂਗੁਏਜ ਪ੍ਰਮੋਟ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਸਕੂਲਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਲੈਂਗੁਏਜ ਐਜ਼ ਐਨ ਆਪਸ਼ਨਲ ਲੈਂਗੁਏਜ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਈ ਜਾਏਗੀ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਨਾਲ ਹਿੰਦੀ ਅਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਸੈਂਟਰਸ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਸੈਂਟਰਸ ਬਣਾਏ ਜਾਣਗੇ 3 ਥਾਵਾਂ ਤੇ ਆਸਟ੍ਰੇਲੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਿਕਟੋਰੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਡਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਦੂਸਰਾ ਕਲੇਮ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ ਉਹ ਹੈ ਹੈਲਥ ਕੇਅਰ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਤੇ ਏਜ ਕੇਅਰ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਨੂੰ ਇੰਪਰੂਵ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਉਮੀਦ ਕਰਦੀ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਜੇ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਅੱਗੇ ਬਣ ਕੇ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਆ ਜਿੱਤ ਕੇ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਆ ਤੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਪ੍ਰੀਮੀਅਰ ਬਣਦੇ ਨੇ ਮੈਥਿਊ ਗਾਏ ਜੀ ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਉਮੀਦ ਕਰਾਂਗੀ ਇਹ ਸਾਰੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਲੇਮਸ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਪੂਰੇ ਕੀਤੇ ਜਾਣ ਸੋ ਦੈਟ ਮੇਰਾ ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਵਰਗੇ ਆਮ ਇਨਸਾਨ ਦੀ ਜ਼ਿੰਦਗੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਹੋਰ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਆਸਾਨ ਔਰ ਬਿਹਤਰ ਹੋ ਸਕੇ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਐਂਬੂਲੈਂਸਿਸ ਦੀ ਘਾਟ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੈਲਥ ਕੇਅਰ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਟਾਫ ਦੀ ਘਾਟ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਨੁਕਸਾਨ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਆ ਜਾਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੋਰ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਧਿਆਨ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਜਾ ਸਕੇ ਤੇ ਉਹ ਜਾਨਾਂ ਨਿੱਕੀਆਂ ਜਾਨਾਂ ਮਾਸੂਮ ਜਾਨਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਬਚਾਈਆਂ ਜਾ ਸਕਣ ਮੈਂ ਵੀ ਲੈਂਦੀ ਹਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਤੋਂ ਇਜਾਜ਼ਤ ਸ਼ੁਕਰੀਆ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਤੇ ਮਿਲਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਅਗਲੀ ਵਾਰ ਅਗਲੇ ਸ਼ੋਅ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ